I'm Gina Bell. I'm a storyteller. This is Jars of Arioch, Chapter 7. I could feel his fear, and it felt so good. Benoit knocked on my door at 9 o'clock in the morning. She told me about the meeting they had all had the night before. Several of the officers wanted to call in a priest, or their pastor. The FBI had spent hours at the scene trying to figure out how the trick was done. They were convinced this had all been some sort of staged performance. Benoit pulled a laptop from her bag and played the GoCam footage from the night before. There was no interference this time. This time he wanted everyone to know what he was capable of. Most of the footage was just the black birds. When she played it frame by frame, you could make out the image of each bird as they flew together in a circular formation. Bill Reagan had literally been pecked to death. His arm that had been around the pregnant woman's throat had been scratched up, but was still an arm. The rest of him had been almost liquefied. We watched as the mass of birds morphed into the man I had seen several times, only this time with massive wings.
I don't want you to tell anyone that I have this video, Tracy. I don't want anyone trying to hide what happened last night.
This was the most emotion I had seen from Benoit.
I've spent my whole life denying this shit. I've always been the logical one, the one that did well in school and went to college while my family in Louisiana was busy lighting candles. I always had this little tiny piece of me that would always take my gree-gree bag with me. I say it's for my mother, but it's not. It feeds that little tiny piece of me. It makes the little Cajun girl in me feel safe, just in case. I know a lot of lawmen that are superstitious. They carry a simple, lucky something or the other. Lucky socks or a lucky shirt. I'm going to send a copy to the guys from LAPD, you, and Raven Wolf, just in case something happens to me.
Nothing's going to happen to you, and nothing is going to happen to me. It's everyone else I'm worried about.
Might I ask how you can be so sure of that?
Just a feeling. I'm beginning to think that there might be something more to the feelings I get. When we were little kids, I would get panic attacks right before Travis and I got taken by any of my mom's friends. Sometimes I would pass out right before and woke up alone in my bed. I knew something had happened because it hurt down there, or Travis was missing. I think the panic attack pass out saved me from going through it.
Do you remember, Tracy, having any weird dreams while you were passed out way back then?
No, but Nanny told me that I was in his world when I passed out at the cemetery. She said that you get something once you're over there. When I touched Nanny, I saw her summoning Arioch. I touched one other person and saw them hit a man in the road and then leave them to die.
And did you ask that person about it?
No, I didn't want that person to know what I had seen. I have to touch their skin. If I touch their clothes, I don't get anything. Benoit rolled up her sleeve and put her forearm in front of me. I hesitantly reached out and touched her arm. In an instant, I was standing in front of an old home that sat along a bayou. A beautiful older woman was standing in front of me, and she was crying a river. She had salt and pepper black hair and huge dark brown eyes. She had a ball around her neck like the one Crow had given me. I could feel her sadness. I could feel her heart breaking. She was begging for us to stay, begging Benoit not to leave her. We pulled away from her and turned our back. We got into the car and we left. I sat in the chair and looked at Benoit.
Did you see anything?
Benoit asked me. I described to her what I had seen, and she teared up a little. She took out her phone and showed me a picture of the same older woman I had just seen. Is that your mother?
Yes,
I think it's interesting that you saw that. Try again for me." I touched her arm again, and the same dream played again for me, perfectly matching the first vision or dream, whatever you want to call it. I needed to touch more people. I needed to play with it, like Nanny had told me. "How about we go for a walk downtown?" Benoit said. Benoit drove us downtown, and we began walking the parkway. The town was starting to reopen and get back to normal, despite COVID, and downtown was packed with people. So packed that it was easy to brush my hand over someone's arm or exposed shoulder, to move past them, and they wouldn't even notice. I saw some truly terrible acts. I watched men beat their wives and mothers neglect their babies. I watched a preacher having sex with another man and then preach against homosexuality. I saw a young man placing his father in a nursing home. The visions began happening so fast, they almost overlapped each other. Car accidents, rapes, molestations, violence, and neglect. It was like watching a horror movie on fast forward. Different scenes did differ in some respects. There was a slightly different hue to some, like the colors were less vibrant in some than others. Like lightning, the real horror stopped, and one continued all by itself. The color of this one was very vibrant. I watched inside his head. I was in a little girl's bedroom. Pink pillows covered a purple comforter with a unicorn on it. There was a pink chiffon canopy over the bed, stuffed pink teddy bears and a tea set in the corner. She came out of the bathroom with a long trail of tears coming from her rosy cheeks. She was cute. She looked like a tiny Who from Whoville. Her big blue eyes glowed against the red of her eyes from crying. She was terrified, and she was crying so hard she was hyperventilating. I had seen enough. My blood began to boil. I clenched my fist and grabbed onto the man's arm with my own hand.
"What the fuck, lady?"
I heard very loudly in my ear. His voice snapped me out of my dream. My eyes fluttered and I was back on the parkway. I was holding a man's arm and he was struggling to get away. Hope stood by my side but did nothing at all. There was a little girl in his arm. She was younger than the little girl I had seen in my vision. I had not seen the man I was inhabiting in the dream, but I knew it was him. He was tall and heavy-set with a dirty white t-shirt that read, "Make liberals cry again." His belly was bigger than his wife's, and she looked like she was about to drop. He had a shaggy red beard and huge leathered hands. I could feel him, and I hated him. I wanted to rip him into tiny pieces for the things he will do to her. When I looked into her blue eyes, I wanted to grab her and run. During the struggle, his mask had fallen on the ground. I picked it up and shoved it into my pocket.
"I am so sorry, sir. She hasn't been feeling well."
Benoit came to rescue me.
"Come on, Tracy."
Benoit grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the man and his growing family. I looked at his noticeably young pregnant wife. She couldn't have been more than 17 and already had another one on the way. I knew she had another girl in there. I could feel her sweet, innocent soul, a beautiful soul that a bearded man would molest and destroy. Benoit led me back to my favorite coffee place and we sat down in their tiny lobby. She bought me a bottle of water and sat down next to me. Benoit had recorded my recent encounter. She brought the video up and I could watch myself. I stopped and my eyes rolled into the back of my head. I stretched my arms out and let my head fall back. The crowd parted for me, as if they didn't see me. Each one passed me close enough for me to gaze into their bodies with my hands, and yet no one reacted until I violently grabbed the bearded man.
"Why did you grab him, Tracy?" Benoit asked.
I don't know. It just happened. I saw a series of visions. Some seemed almost faded, and others were bright and visually beautiful, if not for the horrible things I was seeing. His was the brightest and the clearest. His vision was like actually being in the room with his little girl he will molest. He will molest the one in his arms, and I'm sure the little one in her belly. What were the other visions? It was a mixture of things. Car accidents, domestic violence, homosexuality, things like that. It seems to me that you are seeing the worst things people have done or will do. What people are most ashamed of. Yes, but that's subjective, isn't it? The worst thing according to who? Well, maybe according to them. Maybe there's a place in the brain where we keep what we believe to be the worst thing we have ever done, and that's what you see. Technically, legally, I've done far worse things than leave home, but to me, it's the worst thing I've ever done. I think that's what you're seeing. My cell phone buzzed in my pocket, and I reached for it. I looked at the number, and it was my renter. Fuck. Now what? Leaking pipe or roof? I was trying to prepare myself for the worst. Give me a minute, please, I told Benoit, and walked outside to take her call. Hello? Hey, Tracy, it's Nicole. Everything okay at the house? I asked. Yeah, but, your mother is here? She's outside and demanding that I let her in, and she seems pretty, fucked up. Yeah, she seems really fucked up. Don't let her in, I told the renter. Call the cops if you have to, but don't let her in. She'll go away eventually. I'll call her tonight. Okay, but all the neighbors are watching. Yeah, I knew I needed to call my mother to tell her about Travis. I had been avoiding it, but I knew it was time. With the events from the day still fresh in my mind, I asked Benoit to take me back to my hotel. I sat in the coolness of my room, relieved to be out of the heat and away from all those people. I stared at the box my brother's remains were in. I put my hand on the box and dialed our mother. It was 4 p.m. her time. She answered and sounded half asleep, as usual. Hello? It's Tracy, Mom. You fucking little bitch! I couldn't get into my own goddamned house today. You getting rich off that rent? It's nice to hear your voice, too. This isn't your house anymore, and you need to stop going over there. Fuck you, Tracy. Where's my son? He'd never allow this shit. That's why I'm calling, Mom. I put one hand on Hope and the other on Travis. Travis was murdered, Mom. What? What did you just say? Did you just say my son is dead? Yes. He's gone, Mom. What the fuck did you do? I know you had something to do with this. Where are you, Tracy? Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone. I didn't want to go rounds with her or explain any more to her. I sat on the edge of my bed and just listened to my mother's ringtone for the next 2 hours. For 2 hours, the theme to the movie The Exorcist played in my room. I knew one thing for sure. I never wanted to touch my mother again. I couldn't imagine what my mother would view as the worst thing she had ever done, and I didn't want to know. Maybe, in her mind, the worst thing she ever did was using me and my brother's bodies to pay for drugs. If so, I didn't want to know. Maybe it was something else, and that would piss me off even more. After listening to 2 hours of The Exorcist, I turned the sound off on my phone and laid down. I fell asleep and woke up in the little girl's pink room, the same one I had seen from my vision on the parkway. I was in the bed itself, and when I looked down at my hands, I could see the same leathered hands from my dream. I was back inside Mr. Make Liberals Cry again. The little girl was crying and squirming, trying to get away from us. It took all the energy I had to try and hold him back. I could feel his confusion as he struggled to try and grab the little girl. She squirmed out of her bed and faced us. "You gonna be a fourth monkey? Are you gonna do something?" She yelled at us.
What the fuck are you talking about, monkey? What? Get your ass back in bed right now or I'll whoop you good,
he yelled at the little girl. I woke up to Hope barking. Blue was barking in the next room, and my dog wasn't on the bed with me. She was moving side to side in front of me with all her hair standing on end. She was growling and snarling while gnashing her teeth together. There he stood, in the same corner I had seen him in before, black like the night, and yet his blue eyes glowed in the dark. I was so terrified I couldn't scream. It wasn't like the time before. I could move. I could feel myself breathing. I thought my heart might pound out of my chest. He just stood there, tilting his head from side to side. I watched the hat tilt back and forth very slowly. I began to calm down a little. The terror his presence provokes is a profound experience, a humbling experience. My entire body was shaking and my lips were quivering. My dog wasn't scared. She had stopped barking and put herself into a ready-to-kill position between me and the man in the hat. I wondered what I would see if I could touch Aryok. I could hear Kai and Jake next door yelling at Blue to shut up. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I heard Kai yell. "Go check on Tracy. Blue's upset about something." "It's 3 a.m, Kai." "Jake, for fuck's sake, I can't walk or I'd do it myself. Just make sure she's alive." A second later, there was a soft knock at my door. "Hey, Tracy? Sorry to bother you. Kai wanted me to make sure you're okay." The man in the hat continued his tilting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something. He slid a mason jar to me. Hope gnashed her teeth violently as the jar rolled to me. Jake knocked again, this time with more force. I heard him running. "Her car is here, but she won't answer. Call Summer." "There ain't time for that. Jake, just bust the door down if you have to," Kai demanded. I heard and felt the shake of the building as Jake threw his body against the door. The door flew open, and what seemed like hundreds and hundreds of black birds flew out of my room. I could hear Jake yelling and cussing off in the distance as the sound of all those wings were almost deafening. Blue ran at them but stopped before she could get hurt. I just watched in amazement. The steady tornado of birds went on for almost 2 minutes. Once it was over, my room was scattered with black feathers, some still floating in the air. Jake walked into my room with his mouth open in disbelief. His hands still covered his ears. He slowly walked towards me. Kai came from her room on her crutches, and Blue and Hope kept sniffing the corner Aryok had just been standing in. I could hear voices from outside. Someone from the local news team must have been watching my room when it happened. I could hear them celebrating. "Did you get all of that?" "You bet your ass I got it. This video's gonna go viral within minutes. Megan's gonna go apeshit." I knew he was referring to the woman from the news. No more secrets. The world would now see this. The second Kai got to the door, Jake tried to shut the door he had just broken. He stood with his back against it, and the guys from the news stood begging for comment from any of us. "We've been through enough tonight," Jake yelled through the door. "Y'all take yourselves home. You got what you wanted." After a while, they all went back downstairs. The van was still outside. "What happened, Tracy?" Jake asked. I told him about the man in the hat being in my room. I picked up the mason jar he had rolled at me. There was an old photo inside of a set of stairs. It was made of stone and had 3 arches. odd thing was the stairs didn't seem to lead to anything. Maybe there had been a house there at one time or something. I had no idea what it meant. We all decided to get some sleep. We stayed in the same room. I think it made them and me feel safer, but I have no idea why. I looked at the photo and did a Google search for stairs that go nowhere. There was quite a bit of information available on the internet about not only these weird stairs, but many others that had been found in the United States national parks. I read one story from a ranger who had been told not to approach the stairs for any reason. No one had told him why. The stairs in the Smoky Mountains were 7 miles in and off trail. I felt like this was an invitation. I think he's trying to get me to come to him. While reading about weird stairs, I fell asleep on the floor and woke up again in the pink bedroom. I wasn't inside his body this time. I was standing in the middle of the both of them, a terrified little girl pretending to be asleep to my left, and a real human demon of a man on the other. She could see me. I glanced around the room and saw myself in the mirror. I was dressed like Aryok, hat and all, but I was still me. "Aren't you gonna do something?" the little girl screamed at the top of her lungs as she sat on her bed.
Who the fuck are you talking to, girl?
The man walked around me and slid into her bed.
Now you be quiet, he said. I'll get you some candy on the way to school tomorrow.
He started to touch her, and she just stared at me. I stood as tall as I could and began yelling. Vengeance is mine! I'll rip you to tiny pieces, you piece of shit! The words that fell from my mouth were in Enochian. I knew what I was saying, and I knew what the words meant, but they were coming out of me in his language. The man looked around the room.
Who the fuck was that? Who the fuck is here?
He asked quickly. He jumped from his bed and walked to me. He stood an inch from my nose and just glared. He couldn't see me. I hit him as hard as I could with my gloved hand. He dropped to the ground. What the fuck? He looked around the room in shock. I could feel his fear, and it felt so good. I woke up, back on the floor in my motel room. Kai and Jake were curled up in each other's arms on my bed. I quietly fished a mason jar from the box and put the man's face mask into it. I opened the door and sat it down right outside. I laid down with Hope, and she licked my face. She curled her body around mine. Then I realized that the news team had probably just seen me put that jar there. I began to panic, and I got up as quickly as I could to retrieve it. I opened the door slowly and bent down to pick it up, but it was gone. It had only been a few seconds. I had made a decision that night. I was half asleep and emotionally exhausted, but nonetheless, I had made it, and I couldn't unmake it. Nanny told me there would be no negotiations. I had chosen a side. I curled up around Hope and slept very soundly with no dreams. We all woke up about 5 a.m. to the sounds of an ambulance going up Ski Mountain Road. I looked outside, and a long line of police cars followed it up the mountain. Behind the cops went the news team. I turned on the news, but turned the sound all the way down to not disturb Kai and Jake. Within a few minutes, the news broke about a death at the Summit condos on top of Ski Mountain Road. I could see the pregnant woman I had seen yesterday on the parkway. They had her seated on some stairs with a blanket around her. The little blue-eyed girl sat in her lap, sucking her thumb. The woman looked like she was in shock. She just sat there rocking the little girl in her arms. I saw Benoit and the 2 cops from LAPD walking around the caution tape. I would find out later that Mr. Leatherhands had been literally ripped into tiny pieces. The local news was on the case and showed a video of hundreds of blackbirds flying out of my room. I knew Benoit was going to want me to move. I knew it didn't matter where I slept anymore. The two lovers in my bed yawned and began waking up.
"What's going on now?"
Jake asked while trying to adjust his eyes to see the TV. There was a murder at the Summit condos. I guess they're up the mountain. I saw a bunch of police cars and an ambulance going up Ski Mountain, I told Jake.
The Summit's on the top of the mountain behind us. Did they say if it was another man with a hat murder?
Jake asked, sleepy. Haven't said much yet, just that someone died up there.
Well, it could be anything then, right?
Kai asked. I suppose, I answered. I suppose it could be anything. I saw Benoit and the cops from LAPD, so I'm assuming it's more than just a domestic fight gone wrong. Kai and Jake went back to their rooms so they could take showers and get ready for the day before Jake had to go to work. I sat in my room knowing that I had murdered someone. Might as well have ripped him to pieces myself. I felt no empathy for him, and I didn't feel bad at all. I sent a predator in to kill another predator. I had no guilt, and the fact that I had none worried me just a little. A few minutes later, Benoit showed up at my door. She didn't say anything. She walked in and sat down on the bed next to me for a few seconds. "Do you know what happened at the Summit?" she asked. "Yes, but I don't know any details."
"Well, a man was murdered. He was ripped apart, Tracy. The wife had almost no blood on her at all. The wife said that he got up in the middle of the night and started speaking another language that she had never heard before. She said he was standing in the middle of the room and he just fell to the ground. She got up to see what was wrong with him, and he just kept yelling at nothing. She went into the bathroom, and she said when she came out, he was all over the room. She wasn't even sure if it was him at first. Apparently, he was in tiny pieces all over the room. The man that died up there, well, he was the same one you grabbed yesterday, Tracy. Did you tell anyone about yesterday? Or is this just another coincidence?"
"No, I didn't tell anyone," I responded.
"Well, I want you to keep it that way. I'm still trying to figure all this out. We don't need any more attention your way. Know what I mean?"
Yes. Of course I knew what she meant. I fished out the photo that he had sent me and showed it to Benoit. "He brought this to me last night. I woke up and he was in my room again. He slid a mason jar to me with this photo in it. I looked it up, and apparently there's a set of stairs that lead to nothing, and they're here in the Smokies. They're way back there, like 7 miles off trail. I think he wants me to go to them."
"Well, I really don't want you to go there alone. And who the fuck cares what he wants anyway?"
"I wouldn't be alone." I looked down at Hope.
"Well, that's not good enough. Hope is great, but there's no way I'm allowing you to go into these woods by yourself."
"Allowing me? Who says I need your approval?" Benoit looked at me as if I had slapped her.
"Okay, then. I am asking you not to go into these woods alone."
"Well, I'm going. If you want to go with me, you can. But I am going."
I need a few days to get ready. I'm guessing you've never been camping before."
"Nope. Travis and I would sleep in the yard occasionally, but never camping in the woods."
"Tracy, you can't just go in there and hope for the best. You need gear and food and water, things like that. I'll get everything together, and we can leave in 2 days. Is that quick enough for you?"